All right, let's move to beans. I already soaked my beans and I have it in this huge pot right here because I made more than what the recipe I gave you called for. So I'm going to add the water to it. So why do we soak beans? Beans, legumes, most nuts and seeds, they have an enzyme inhibitor that prevent you from digesting it well. And beans are notoriously uh, gassy. So if you don't soak your beans and then rinse your beans and then cook your beans and then rinse your beans again, the chances of you being flatulent is almost 100%, right? So we already went through one soak and one rinse. We're going to cook it now, but I'm going to show you a really fast hack. Some of you may already know this. If you want your beans to cook really much faster, I'm going to turn on the fire now. Uh, Add a little bit of sodium bicarbonate, a little bit of baking soda. So I have 5 cups of beans, which will translate into like 8 cups of beans after they're cooked. I'm going to put about a teaspoon, just a teaspoon, maybe a heaping teaspoon of sodium bicarbonate, baking soda in the pot. And that cuts down the cooking time tremendously by half, probably. So if you're in a hurry and you need to make beans really fast, you can parboil your beans in baking soda and let them sit. If you have an hour, let them sit for an hour and then rinse them and then cook them again in plain water, and they'll be done in 45 minutes. So, if you forgot to soak your beans the night before, you can totally just parboil them with some baking soda or parboil them even without some baking soda. And if you have to do it in the morning for an evening meal, it, they get done pretty quickly. So we're going to let that roll.
Are we cooking the beans separately from our bean soup?
Yes. Yes. If you are making a bean dish, I prefer to soak them, cook them, drain them, rinse them, and then put them in my dish with my broth or whatever I'm making. So if you soak them and rinse them, and then you just really need to throw everything together and put it in your slow cooker for the day, you can do that, but know that it might cause a little flatulence. So let's just start from the beginning. So you take your dried beans. It's nice to sort them because sometimes there's rocks or clods of dirt in them, right? So you want to sort them out and then rinse them and then soak them. You just cover them with water and let them soak. It's nice to soak them overnight. If you don't have that much time, soak them for a few hours at least. Then you rinse them again, and then you put them in the pot with your water. And if you want to make it faster, you can throw a little bit of baking soda in it. You don't have to put a lot. A little bit makes it alkaline enough and it softens a bean. And you let it cook until the beans are tender. There's a chart on cooking beans traditionally without the baking soda. This makes it a little bit faster. I just thought I would show you that. Just just because it's a thing that seasoned cooks begin to know about. I do think it's important to say, if you try to cook your beans in something that's acidic, for example, I've known people that made baked beans from scratch, and they've done it for years, and then all of a sudden the beans never got tender. They stayed hard, and whenever you try to cook your beans in something acidic, your beans will not soften. So a baked bean recipe has tomato sauce in it, and So you want to cook your beans until they're pretty done before you add all the goodness into your bean dish, so that they can continue to get tender, if that makes sense. Okay.
There was another question about the beans. I'm not sure. Maybe Michelle can clarify this. Do you put beans soaked in the soup? Do you just put beans soaked in the soup?
So if
It
once they're soaked, do you don't have to take it through another cook step? You can put it right into the soup, I think is the question. Maybe, is that right, Michelle?
perhaps.
Okay. You can. The answer
Yes.
is the answer is you can. So once they're soaked, once they're rinsed, you can add them right to your soup. But be careful about the acid that you put into it. You don't want it to be acidic, because the beans will take forever, or they won't ever get tender.
Yes. And one more.
Okay.
If we make the bean soup in an Instapot, do we need to pre-cook the beans and rice?
All right. So if you're making the bean, if you put beans and rice in the Instapot, I mean, you totally can. The way I use my Instapot to make beans is I will soak my beans first. I'll rinse them and I'll throw them right into the Instapot. If I am making, like, if I'm good, if I'm not going to take it through another step, if I'm not making it for later, like if I'm not, like right now I'm making these black beans for the next couple of days. So I will take just the beans and put them in the fridge until I'm ready to use them. If I have these soaked beans and I'm just going to make dinner, I'll put my broth in there and my vegetables or whatever I'm putting in there, and turn on the Instapot and let it roll. And when it's done, my meal's done. So getting the whole thing about beans is getting that second rinse. You are taking the possibility of flatulence down a lot each rinse you do. So, you know, if you eat beans frequently, the chances of you having your body has probably adapted and doesn't get as gassy. Whereas somebody that's just getting started with beans, they might feel way gassy if they don't do that second rinse. So Michelle, totally not, go for it. Like, have your have your second run on your beans. You know, you can make your meal, from the soaked beans, and just do it, and that'll be very fine. The beans, if you're going to use them right away to cook a meal, use them right away to cook a meal. You want to strain them so that the water is gone. Um, Whether you use them right away or store them, and then just put them in a container and put them in the fridge until you're ready to use them. I don't like to have anything uh, in my fridge longer than 3 days. If you know you are going to have your beans in your around for more than 3 days, you can always put them in a Ziploc or some other container and put them in the freezer, and that's perfectly fine. You freeze it in portion sizes, and then you just pull it out and use it as needed. So that's a really um, great hack to use when you're trying to navigate your plant-based cooking. Have beans on hand. You can always have canned beans on your hand, but I just really appreciate the process of cooking the dry beans and making that um, something that you do on a weekly basis. So legumes, we'll get into that more with some recipes. I've got some really nice recipes with legumes. They don't take nearly as long to cook. And nutritionally, they're very similar to beans. So beans and legumes are considered uh, from a nutritional standpoint about the same. So, like red lentils take 20 minutes to cook, something like that.